Hi everyone, this is Abhay Talreja and thank you for tuning in. Today what we're going to cover is JavaScript arrays. Now what has happened is as I start developing my projects, I work with my team members, I work with my colleagues, I work with my students. What I've observed is although they all start very passionately, they learn all the basics of JavaScript, but they really do not make the full use of those. And that is why I wanted to create this video to give you more information and to tell you exactly what to use, where to use, especially when it comes to JavaScript arrays. Now, arrays have been one of the complicated topics for many of my students. So I thought might as well let's do a quick video where I'll give you the top 10 of my favorite ones that I end up using a lot and the other operations that you can basically do with the JavaScript arrays. Now, keeping that in mind, let's actually cut the chase and get directly into an array. And let me show you what I have on the screen. So if you see out here, I have two arrays. One is nothing but the games. The other is a numbers array, which is very straightforward. So we're going to play with both a simple array as well as an array of objects because we wanted to, basically dig into the different aspects of arrays as well as the operations that you can perform using the different methods that the array object exposes. Just to give you a brief summary, I have split the entire JavaScript arrays into 4 different types of operations. One is the basic operations, which is basically you will use in almost all the cases. The other is mutator methods, and some of the items which we cover in the basics are also mutator methods. But in reality, they are mutator methods. They do update the state of the JavaScript object that you are playing with. The other is the accessor methods, where you just use them for accessing the content of your array in a different way or the format. And the last is nothing but the iterator methods, which give you multiple options to basically play with your array and get the desired output and with the optimal performance. Yes guys, that's most important. While coding, we really do not focus on doing things because for doing something, you will have 10 different ways of doing it. But doing it right, there might be only 1 or 2. So knowing all your approaches, knowing all your performance approaches is very important for your development. Now that was a brief summary. Let me just show you what I have on the console or on the screen. So just like you see, this is a browser where our code is. This is our HTML file. We have a console open as well, which is basically what we'll use for the most part. Whatever we code here in a script, you see the script.js, whatever I will write out here will be outputted onto the console so that you can see the results immediately. And of course, there is an assignment that I want you to complete at the end of the video. So basically, if you go through this entire video, you will learn a lot of things. Now, while learning, you also need to focus on an assignment that I'll probably give you at the end of the video. Now, the assignment is going to be very simple. You can actually solve it or crack it with just 1 line of code. Now, if you're up for the challenge, pay attention and I'm sure you will be able to get it. Of course, the way to answer the assignment is very straightforward because it's just 1 line of code. All I expect you to do is answer that 1 line of code in the comment section. I'm not sure how many of you will be able to actually get it. Well, if you get it, I'll be really proud that you actually got some information from this video that helped you in certain way or form. And of course, there's a styles.css, which is nothing but it is used to just style it differently. And this is our HTML file, which is basically rendered out here. We are not going to touch the HTML file. We'll just be playing in the script.js. So you can just focus on the script.js and the console. And at the end of the video, I will be sharing the code on my GitHub. So you can definitely go and verify and play with it as much as you want. Alright. So let's get with the basics of any array. How will you know what elements are there in an array? How do you know what size of that array is? Well, we always start with the length property. Let's do a console log and see what the length property is on games array. So let's do games.length. And again, I'm using Visual Studio Code for my development at this point. And you can see the moment I type, it gives me prompts on what those methods are and what type of methods, what are the parameters it accepts, etc. So having a code editor definitely helps. Let's actually just do this one. And because it's a console, I'll have to refresh it every time. You can see the answer is 6. Similarly, if I just go here and do numbers array dot length, it's a property. Now if I do this, I should get 6, 5. So this has 6 elements and this has 5 elements. That was easy. Actually, that was one of the basic things that you do with an array. Now, that being said, as I keep on going with different operations, different properties and different methods in an array, I will keep moving them and commenting down so that we do not get confused as we learn the newer concepts. Now, just one another important thing. I hope everybody knows this, but when you have an array of, let's say, 5 elements, the first element gets a key or an index. We call it 0th place. The next one, the first. The next one, the second, third, and so on and so forth. Now, let's see that in example. One other thing that you need to note is when you try to retrieve something from an array, you basically use box brackets like this, and you give the index or of the object that you need. So in this scenario, if we need the object 3 or the number 3, we'll have to give it an index. Now, if I give the index as 2, it should give me the output as 3 because it's at the second index. Now, to get that, I will have to first let me clear this console and refresh it. And you can see the answer comes out to be as. Let's comment that out. Let's see the next thing that we have, which is nothing but your index of. So if you want to get the index of a particular element, you can use index of, and that will give you the index of that element. So for example, if you want to do a console log and let's do numbers array, and you want to get what the index of that element is, what you will do is index of, and you will put an element, let's say 4. So in this scenario, you will get the answer to be as third position. Let me clear this console, refresh the screen, and the answer would be third. So the index is third. 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now, if you want to do a index of the fifth element, which is number 5, in that scenario, when you do this, let me save this, refresh it, and the answer would be 4. Now, what happens if you try to do something which is not even there in the array? Let's say number 6. If you do this, if there's no item in the array, then you will always get a -1. Now, what does this tell you? This basically gives you a very important thing that you can use in logical operations, or basically your if-else conditions, where you want to check if certain things are present in your array. If they are, do something. And if they are not present, where you get a -1, you do something else. So that is very useful when you're trying to write any logical operation. The next item that we are going to cover is push. And as the name suggests, push operation basically pushes something onto the array. Now the beauty about this is when you push something onto the array, push also gives you a result, which is nothing but the size of the array. So for example, let push result is equal to where we'll store the result for. Let's use the same numbers array and push another item. Let's say we push 10 onto the array. Okay. Now what will happen is when you do a console log of your numbers array, you should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 10 as the contents of your array. So let's refresh the page. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 10. Now what happened to the push results that we had? Let's try to display that as well. Push result. And let's refresh. You can see it displays the size of your array. Of course, the console also gives you the size 6, but if you want to store what the result size was, you can use this assignment and store it into a variable. Now let's try to use the same push operation to actually push another game onto this games array. So let's do the same thing, which is games.push, and because it is an array of games, we'll have to push an object, which is nothing but another game. The name, let's say control. And let's also give it a price. Let's say 250. Now, if you do a console log of your games array, you should see that there are 7 objects in that games array. And if you expand it, it will give you all the 7, including the 6th one, which you just added, which was the control, and the price is $250. Let's comment that out and let's go to the next operation that we have, which is nothing but pop. And as the name suggests, push pushes an object to the array, pop pops out an object from the end of the array. So actually, let's use the same example that we had for push and then pop it out. Let me get it down. Alright, because now we have added 2 items, which is on the numbers array, we added the number 10, and on the games array, we added the new game called control. So let's pop it out. So let's say pop result 1 is equals to numbers array array.pop. This will give you the item that was pop. So let's do a console.log of pop result 1. This should basically give you, and let me comment the console log for the push so that we don't have to worry about the results. Okay, you see the item that was popped was number 10. Now if you print out the numbers array now, it will just give you the numbers 1 to 5, and the last object 10 which you pushed out here will no longer be part of that array. You can see now it has only 5 elements. Similarly, if you will pop out your games array, so let's say pop result2 is equals to games.pop. This should pop out the control game that you added at the end. So pop result2, and let's see what the answer is. And you can see the games object or the control game object was popped out. And if you do a console log of your games again, you should see only 6 elements. You see 6 elements, and if you expand it, you can actually see all 6, which is everything but the control game. Let's clear the console. Let's comment this code out and we can move ahead. So that was your push and pop. Now what if you want to pop out an item which is at the start of the array? Well, very simple. There is another thing called as a shift. The shift operation. So let's say if you have shift result is equals to numbers array dot shift. What this will do is this will basically remove the first element from the array. So let's do a console log of shift result and see what the response is. You see the first element, which is number 1, was removed. And if you now do a console log of your numbers array, what you should see is numbers 2 to 5. You can see numbers 2, 3, 4 and 5, which is the size of 4. So that was very easy. You could just remove an element from the start of a string. Similarly, we have something called as unshift, which does nothing but pushes an item at the beginning of the array. So now you popped out, basically you shifted the first element, which is number 1. Now let's put it back onto the array. How we can do that? Well, it's very simple. We'll do a numbers array dot unshift, and then we'll pass the same shift result so that we are adding the same number back onto the array, which is number 1. Now if you see console.log of, let's also store this into a variable. Let's say let's shift result, unshift result, actually it should be unshift result is equal to something. Let's just print it out. This should give you the new length of your array. So let's refresh and you can see the 5th item was added at the beginning of the array. So let's see what that 5th item is, and it should be number 1 because that is what you removed. You can see the array becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back again. So that is nothing but shift and unshift. So push and pop for the end and shift and unshift for the beginning of the array. Alright, so the next item that we're going to see is called splice. Now what does splice do? Well, it lets you add or remove items from the array. Now basically the syntax of this is you give the start, you give the delete count, and then you give the items, basically a list of items. So item 1, item 2, item 3, which you want to add into the array. So for example, in our numbers array, so let's say if I want to do a console log, and let's do numbers array dot splice, and I just want to remove one item. So you start from the index 0 and you say I want to remove one item from this array, which is at index 0. So 0, and then it will remove only one item. So if I refresh it, 1 should be out of that array. You see, item, it creates an array of 1. I can of course store it into another array if I want to. So let's say if I move this into a variable, let's say splice result 1 is equals to something. This is nothing but another array that I will get as a result. Splice result 1. Let's refresh and the answer doesn't change because it's just 1. Let's say if I remove 2 items from that array, I refresh the first and the second. If I change the start index, let's say instead of 0, I made it 2. In that scenario, it will go to index 2, which is 0, 1, index 2, and then it will remove 2 elements from here, which is 3 and 4. Let's try that out. You can see the answer is 3 and 4. Similarly, if instead of going from the front of the array, if you want to go from the back side, what you got to do is you have to apply negative numbers. So this is -1, this is -2. So if I want to remove 4 and 5, what I'll do is instead of doing this, I'll make it a -2. Let's try this and it should give me 4 and 5 as a result. Okay. So that's how you can splice number of items, basically remove number of items. Let's say after removing -2, which is 4 and 5, I want to add more items. Let's say 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. In this scenario, when I refresh it, what I will see is 4, 5 is removed. But now if I see my numbers array, it will have those items added from that index. So let's say numbers array. And now if we refresh, you should see 1, 2, 3, 4. As I remove 4 and 5 from that array, those are removed. But from the place or the position 4 started, the next items that I'm inserting will be inserted, which is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now instead of -2, if I gave the index as 2, what would happen? Because on index 2 was 3 and 4. So 3 and 4 will be removed and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 will be added. And then because 5 was after that, 5 will be there. Let's refresh this and see the results. You can see 1, 2 and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and then 5 because 3 and 4 were removed from the array. So splice is very powerful when you use it correctly. Trust me, I have seen people who don't even know splice exists. So if you know splice exists, put it to use. It is super helpful. It is very creative and it cuts down your code, because when you want to filter out something from your array or you want to add something to the array, it's always a pain point. Splice will definitely save your life in those instances. Now, the next item that we are going to see is slice. So just like splice, slice basically gives you a begin and an end that you can remove, or basically if you want a portion of your array to be extracted, you can use slice. That's pretty much your slicing activity. Now again, so we will use the same array, let's say slice result, so that we see what the return or the returning array is. We'll do a numbers array dot slice, and let's say I want the slice from 2 to 3. Basically very small, begin and end. Let's do a console log and let's do slice result. Now if I refresh this, you can see I only got one element, which is starting from index 2, which is 0, 1, 2 and ending at index 3, which is this guy. So you do not include the end part of it. You only use the begin part of it. So the end basically tells you where you want to end your execution. So do not take that into consideration. Now similarly, if instead of 3, I made that 4, I'll get 2 elements. And guess what? It will be 3 and 4. Now what if you want to go from the backside, just like you had splice, you could get negative numbers. You can also give negative numbers to the end. So in that scenario, if you give -2, you should get 3. The answer should be the same because we have a count of 5 elements into the array. So -2 will mean this and this. So your end index is this item. So if you start from here and if your end index is this, you always get the answer as 3. So that's your array. So slice is also very powerful when you use it effectively. Alright, the next item or the next few items that we are going to talk about are nothing but your mutator methods. Now mutator method means it modifies the content of your array without returning another array. It basically just updates mutation. Basically it updates that state or updates that content of that array. Okay. As the name says, copy within. You basically copy a portion or the entire array into the array. So first is your target, then you give the start and then you give the end. So let's see our numbers array, what happens to it. So let's do a console.log and let's say numbers array dot copy within. Let's just start with 0 and let's say 3. Now here I have given two things, which is the target, which is 0, and the start, which is the third index. Let's save this, refresh it. You can see 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. So what it does, it goes 0, 1, 2 and third index, which is 4 and 5, and then starts replacing the content of the array from the 0th index, which is 4, 5 will be replaced here. So what you see here is 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. Let's say if I change this to, instead of third, if I make this a second, what it will do, it will pick up 3, 4, 5 and start from 0th index, which is 3, 4, 5. So it will be 3, 4, 5, 4, 5. Let's see what happens. See, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5. Now that was 0 and 2. Now let's say if you want to just give one item to be replaced. So instead of 2, you say now 3 as well. So basically what we did was, sorry about that. So we had to replace contents at the 0th index, starting from 2 and ending at 3. So 0, 1, 2, which means 3, and ending at 3rd index, which is 4. 4 will not be included. So only 3 will be substituted for 1. Let's see the result. You see, only 3 is substituted for 1. Now, what if you just give one number? Let's say we just give a number 2. What does that indicate? Well, it indicates the target should be the second element. And the entire array will be replaced. So 0, 1, 2. So from here, the entire array will be replaced. Now, if you do not give anything, well, it will just give you the same array, assuming that it's 0. So nothing will be operated on. Similarly, if you want to start from the end of the array, you give a negative number. Let's say -2. And if you refresh, only here 1 and 2 will be replaced. -1 and -2 will be two places that the array starts from. The next item that we are going to cover is called as fill. What it does, as the name suggests, it fills the content of your array with a particular value. So the syntax for it, of course, it needs a value and it needs a start and an end index. Now, the good thing about JavaScript is that it has followed the same standard. So if you see, for all these functions or all these methods, we have start and the end index. Pretty much the same standard applies for all your methods. So you can assume the start and the index we played around down there will be very much similar or in lines with what we are going to do for fill. So let's do a console.log and let's do a numbers array.fill. If I just give a number, let's say 8, what this will do is it will replace all the contents of your array with 8. So you will have all the elements replaced by 8. So that was your value. Now let's say if I give a start index, let's say I want to replace the content only from the 3rd index. In that scenario, 1, 2, 3 will remain and the 4th content will be replaced with your, which is nothing but the 3rd index, will be replaced with the value that you provided. Now again, instead of 3, if I give a -1, it will just replace the last element of your array, which is this guy. Similarly, you can also have an end, start and an end, and it will just work. So let's say if I have the 0th element and I want to stop at the 2nd element. So only 2 elements, which is 1 and 2, should be replaced with 8. You can see that's how you do it. Very simple. Again, I hardly use fill, but you never know in which corner scenario you end up using it. The next item that we're going to see is one of my favorites. Actually, I don't use it as much, but it is very obvious that it is always in my mind because of the name. It says reverse. So if I want to just flip my array, basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goes to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I can use a reverse and it is very straightforward. Let's do console log numbers array dot reverse. And that's it. Boom. Done. If you refresh it, it will give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Easy peasy, right? Similar to reverse, you also have something called as a sort. Again, I use sort more often than reverse, but you never know what you end up doing. So if I do a numbers array.sort, what it will do is it will flip that array again, because we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We flipped it to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This will flip it back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's refresh and you can see 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So reverse and sort basically act oppositely and they sort your array from the basically the first index becomes the last index becomes the first. Alright, now that we have seen some mutator methods, let's go and see some accessor methods. Well, these are one of the, I would say, very, light-hearted or light-weighted methods that you can use. And as the name suggests, let's see the first one, which is nothing but concat. So concat, as the name suggests, you basically concat one array to the other array. So we have a numbers array. Let's add some more numbers to that array. So let's do let more numbers is equals to, let's say 6, 7, 8, and let's do a console.log of numbers array concat more numbers. Now if you do this and run this, you should see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which was my numbers array, and 6, 7, 8, which was my more numbers that I added to the array. Now in case if I flip them, let's say I make more numbers, concatenate with numbers array, it will be in the other order. So basically 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me reverse it back for you to understand. So that was your concatenation. Let's move to the next one, which is nothing but includes. And as the name suggests, if the content of the array contains that item that you're looking for, it will return you a true or a false. So we can easily do a console.log, let's say numbers array dot includes, let's say if it includes number 2, and the answer should be true because it does. Let's say if I do the same thing with the value 6, which is not there in the array, correct? So it should give me the answer false. Now that being said, let's move to the next one. It's actually one of my favorites because not many people use it, but I use it whenever I need to concatenate something. I just put it into an array and then concatenate it into a string. The reason being, it is easy to change everything at one place rather than give a concatenation which is plus this, plus this, plus this. So let me show you that example. So in this scenario, numbers array, right? So console.log, if I just do a numbers array dot join, what it will do is it will display the contents of the array as a string separated by comma. So let's see, it should give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just a string. Now let's say if I don't want comma, I want something else. Let's say a hyphen. So what we'll do is we'll put the hyphen as a separator. Let's refresh and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Instead of hyphen, I want to give an arrow. Well, you can make that an arrow. Nothing will stop you. So join, you can determine what you want to pass. Let's say if I want to pass in a tab, for example. You can see I gave a tab for joining. So you can play around with the string and use join to basically get the desired output using the content of an array. And of course the last one is toString. Well, it is very simple. It just converts your current array into a string. So let's say numbers array dot toString. Should be a function. Let's refresh it and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's basically just does what join did with the comma. So that's pretty much it. Okay. Now we're going to start something that I love the most, which is iterating over the array. The iterator methods are one of my favorites because the whole concept of having an array is basically a group of similar elements that you can go over, like a list of to-dos, like a shopping cart, or probably list of books that the person has to read or check out, or the list of favorites. It's all an array of multiple objects. So more often than ever, you will always want to iterate over the array. Now to know this section is what basically will change the way you code, because the more you know about these methods, the more easier your life gets when you're playing with arrays. So let's get started. Let's see one of the most important ones that I always use, and probably you will end up using too, is your forEach, which does nothing but iterates over all the elements of your array. It's basically writing a for loop where you iterate from the 0th index to the last index. So let's say I have my for loop, which is numbers array dot for each. As you see, the prompt was a method. It will be a method and accepts a method. So you have an item, and I'm going to use ES6 functions out here. And what we will do is we'll just do a console.log and print out the item. Okay. Now if you see this, what it should give me is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's my result. Now if I want to do the same thing with my games array, I'll copy this and change this to games. What should I expect? Let me comment this out so there's enough space for us to see. You should see I see all the 5 items that, or the 6 items, or the 6 games that is there, and it displays an object. You can expand and see all the attributes that that object consists. So it doesn't matter if you have a simple, primitive JavaScript object, or you have primitive type, or you have any complex object or an array of objects inside the content. You can just iterate over it using the forEach, and it's one of the most useful functions or the method that you will ever use. Moving on to the next one, every. So as the name suggests, every basically tests that if every element of your array satisfies that condition, And if every element of your array satisfies that condition, you can say that that condition is met. So for example, in my games array, so games.every, and now I will give my condition. Let's say return, and the return will be basically item.price is greater than, let's say, $15. If all of the items, let's put it into a result, every result, and let's just do a console log what happens. Console.log and say every result. Let's save this, clear the console, refresh the page. You can see the answer is true because the price starts from 20 and all of the game items basically meet that condition. Now what if you change that 15 to, let's say, 21, because the lowest that you have is 20. Now if you refresh, this answer becomes false because this condition is not met, because the price of 20 cannot be greater than 21, and that's where the condition fails. So if you just want to get a boolean for your if-else condition, whether your array is pristine, for example, if you have an ID for all the to-dos into your list, in that scenario you can just go through it and make sure that the ID is not null for any of the elements, and then you can present that array onto the screen or give the user an error. So that was one of the very basic examples that you can think about for the every method that you will ever use. Next is again one of my favorites, and I use it more often than ever, which is filter. And as the name suggests, it filters your array into a smaller array based on a condition. So let's see. So if I have let filter result, again it has to be an array that you will get as a response. And if I do a numbers.array and I do a filter, I can use the item, again the same thing. And what we can check for is return if item is greater than 3. If this condition is met, you will get the response in the content. So basically let's do a refresh, and now if I do a refresh, the answer is 4 and 5. Sorry about that typo. It was fill instead of filter, so I changed it back to filter and the result came as expected, which was 4 and 5, because only these two numbers are greater than 3. Let's say if I add more content, let's say 1, 2 and let's say 8, in that scenario you should only get 4, 5 and 8. You can see the answer should be 4, 5 and 8. Let's go back to what it was, to a standard array of 5. Now the same applies to your games. Instead of numbers array, if I change this to games, and let's say for example I want to get all the games which are more than $100. I need to put the price because it's a games object. Now if I do, I should get two elements, and the price is 125 and 200 because that is more than 100. If I change the condition, let's say instead of this to $80, in that scenario I should get this 85, 100, 200 and 125. So 4 items. As you can see, I got 4 items. So the final resulting array is nothing but a filtered item. So if you're considering a to-do list, for example, the items that are marked as completed, you don't want them to be there in your display. So what you do, you can easily filter out the items which are marked as deleted or completed and just display the items which are yet to be worked upon. That's one of the very common examples of a filter. Let's comment this out. The next item, actually items I should say, which is, I'm going to cover them together because it's find and find index. So one is find and the other one is find index. Now, as the name suggests, find will find an element and find index will get the index of that element. So let's see. Let find result is equals to games.find so item and return item dot price is double equal to 200. Okay, let's do a console log of find result. Now if I refresh the page, you can see I got the division 2 as the game that had the price of 200. So I get the resulting object. Now if instead of 200, let's say I gave 100. So anything which is greater than 100 should meet the condition. So what will happen in that scenario? The first element or the first item that actually meets the condition will be your response. So if I do a less than 100, for example, so if you go through the list, this is not less than 100, this is also not less than 100 because it's equal to 100, not less than 100, and 85. That's the first element that's less than 100. So this is the item that you can expect if you give the condition as item.price is less than 100. You can see this is what you get. And the loop or the iteration stops immediately it finds the first element. Now that was fine. So it gives you the object or the content that you were looking for. What if you want to get the index of that item? Well, very easy. So the same thing, I'll comment this out. I'll copy it here. Instead of find, I'll make that find index. And as the name suggests, find index of item for which the price is less than 100. So the first item that it finds is this guy, and the index for this is 0, 1, 2, and 3. So the answer expected should be 3. Again, similarly, if I give the condition as double equal to 100, in that scenario, the index should be 1 because 0 and the first element. So that was your find and find index. The next two also I'm going to take it up together, which is nothing but keys and values. And I'm going to use it on the games array. So let's do a console. Well, first let's put the keys. So let keys equals to games dot keys. So whenever you give a keys, it basically returns you an iterator, and therefore you will do let I equals, let's say let key of keys, and now you can start displaying the keys. Because I have the games as an array, this should just give me index 0 to 6. So let's do a key as an output. Save it, refresh it, you should see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as your keys, which is nothing but the index. Similarly, instead of keys, if you make this values, it should give you the content which is there. So if you do a value, it should give you the object. It should be key. Let's change this to value so that we don't get confused. Values, and let's see what we get. You see, the content, basically whatever was at index 0 will be displayed as a value, at 1 will be displayed. So it basically gives you the index of the entire array and the values of the entire array. That's why I feel it is not very useful, because I don't know what you will do about that array, because as long as you have the length of the array, you can get that content easily. So I very probably never actually use keys and values in my code. But again, it's good to know just in case, and maybe if you're answering an interview and it comes up, well, good for you. The next one is actually my favorite, which is map. So map is very similar to forEach, but the only difference is when you loop through the content using a map, you can actually perform an operation on your array, and what it returns is a new array with the updated content. So for example, if tomorrow I want to just double the cost price of my games because it's Thanksgiving and I know that it will sell. So what I can do is I can just take this, let games price is equal to, I'll do a games dot map, which means I'll go through each and every item in the content or the array. Once I loop over it, what I will do is return item dot price into 2. Now if I just do a return of this, it will give me an array of all the price, which is not what I need, but I'll show you what the result is. So let's do a games price. It just give me times 2 of all the price of the games. Let's refresh. You can see 250, 200. Just multiplied this price item by 2. But I don't want the price alone. I need the updated object. In that scenario, what I should do is I should export it out as an object. So name should be item.name and price should be item.price times 2. And that should be my object. If I do that, when I refresh it, I should actually get a similar object with the price doubled. Okay, let's see the content, and you can see the price has doubled for every item that I had. So that's how you can use map, and map is very often used. In fact, a lot of libraries you will see forEach and maps very extremely used. Let's comment this out. Let's cover the easy one, which is nothing but sum, and then at the end we'll cover the reducer or the reduce function. So sum, as the name suggests, if any of the content of the array meets that condition, it will return a true. Just like in every, you expected that every element of the array satisfied that condition, you will return a true or a false. In sum, basically even one element of the array satisfied the condition, the response will be given back to the user. So let's say let sum result is equals to games.sum item, and here we will say return if item.price is greater than 20. When one item is greater than 20, your response should be, oh well, I haven't done a console log. This should take care of it. You should get an answer true. Similarly, because there are no items which is less than 20, if I give that same condition as less than, it should give me an answer false, because there was 0 items in the array that met that condition. So even if one item in the array met that condition, sum will return the response as a true. Otherwise, it will return the response as a false. Let's go to the last one. And probably it took some time for me when I initially learned about reduce, because it is a little complicated to understand as well. So I hope I can decipher it and make it very interesting for you to understand. So let's do an exercise where I want to find or sum of all the prices of the games. So basically, if I decide to buy all the 6 games that are there in my array, what should be my total? Very simple. I could, basically iterate through using a for each and do a sum and then carry a variable out which can be used, and that can be easily done. But using a reduce, you can actually get the contents very easily. So how will you use it? Well, it should be game.reduce, and it accepts a reducer. Let me just write the comment. A reducer is nothing but a function that will tell you what to do in order to get the response. So let's say let reduce result is equals to games.reduce, and here I will pass it a reducer. So let's call it as sum reducer. If you run this, you will get sum reducer is not defined. So let's go and define that. Let sum reducer is equals to, now the reducer or the reducer function basically expects 2 parameters, which is nothing but your accumulator, which will accumulate the total. And the next one is nothing but your current item. And now when every item is iterated, current item will get updated and accumulator will basically keep on adding the total. Now let's do a return of accumulator plus current item dot price. Now the problem is when you do a current item dot price and you put it to accumulator, you will not get the correct response. You got an object which is nothing but a concatenation of the string. You don't need that. You need an object. So what we'll do is we'll expose this or return this as a price, and it will be nothing but accumulator dot price. So you create it as an object and you return it as an object. Now let's try to save this and run this. What you get is price as 580. Of course, the result, you can directly do the result, or you can do reduce result dot price, and you should still be able to get the same result. Similarly, you don't have to always do a sum. You can also find the most expensive game of all the 6, and that also can be done very easily. So for that, all you have to do is write another reducer. Expensive reducer. Let's comment this out so you can actually see the contents later. Let me move this to a new line so that we can actually create some more magic. So expensive reducer is what we will pass out here. Now what this is, we'll have to write an accumulator, comma, current item, just the way we did previously. And now you need to return. Now what will you return? Well, you have to first compare which one is the expensive one. For that, you can just use a math.max. So let's do that. And again, we'll use the same object structure. Accumulator.price. Well, you have to first do a math.max. Math.max will basically compare 2 numbers. Accumulator.price comma, current item dot price. Let's save this. Let's run it. And you can see the most expensive given is $200, which is the division 2. So that's how you can write a reducer, which basically helps you go over every item, and based on what you want to iterate over, you can get the content out of it. So you can write your reducer the way you want to. And I think that is very helpful as well. A little complicated to understand, but once you get a hold of it, you can very well use it into your day-to-day activities. So that was pretty much it from the JavaScript arrays lecture. Now, if you have any questions, any suggestions, let me know in the comments below. And as far as the assignment goes, we will talk about the assignment and let's see if you can actually get hold of the assignment by yourself. And if you're able to do the assignment, fantastic. If not, just peek into the comments and you should be able to see somebody answering the question. And if you yourself cannot get the answer, pause the video. Now going to the assignment, well, the assignment is actually very simple. Now going to the assignment is actually very simple. All you gotta do is one simple thing, and if you can't get the solution, do not worry about it, I'll help you out. You can pause the video if you really want to try out the solution. Now coming back to the assignment that I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, well, the assignment is very simple and a straightforward one. You should be able to get it very easily. So let's go and see what we need to do in the assignment. Well, all you have to do is Alright, now is the time to do the assignment. Well, we have gone through so much for JavaScript arrays and it's time to actually put that to use. Now again, if you have followed along, you should be able to get it very easily on what we are trying to do. And if you cannot follow, do not worry, I'm giving you the solution at the end of the video. So you should be able to basically understand what we are trying to do by the end of the video. So let's go and see what we are looking for. So what you need to do is you have an quotes array, which is you like JavaScript, love the video, you subscribe to the channel, you press the bell icon and you rock. Now this is nothing but an array object. What you want to display is a string of items in the same order. How will you do it? What should you do? It's just one line of code that you need to write in console log to display it onto the screen. Now for whoever who doesn't want to basically try this out themselves can go ahead and watch the video. But if you really want to try it out, I'll say pause the video so that you can basically play with the code to get the desired output. If not, let's see what we need to do. Well, the answer is very simple. First of all, let's do a console log and let's say hello, which means that our code is working. And refresh, you should see hello. Oh, I do have a script.js console log here. Let's comment that out. Go back to assignment. So we do have hello out here displaying. Now we need to display this array, which is quotes. Let's display that. And in order to display it as a string, we could use the join method. And what will that display? Let's clear the console. Let's do a refresh. You can see it displays a comma separated value. We don't want comma separated value. We want everything to be in a new line. So for that, what we are going to do is we're going to put a quote /n. This should be able to give the content in a new line. Now that being said, if you haven't still smashed that like button, probably I need to really get into your head to do that. Well, jokes apart, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you liked any part of the video or you want me to improve on any part of the video, do let me know in the comments. I'll be very happy to work on it. But the whole point of this video was to help you understand JavaScript arrays. And I hope I've done my job. In any case, I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care.